Welcome to the Nerd Party.
Let the filibustering begin.
Welcome to Nerd Pod.
Hello and welcome to Filibuster here on the Nerd Party Network. On today's show we stand two of 2023's biggest icons. Two incredibly strong, intense, powerful women who have a questionable hold over the other women in their life. Women who are not afraid to resort to violence if threatened, prepared to do whatever it takes to protect themselves and their legacy, and of course also possess a unique musical performance style. I of course can only be talking about M3GAN and Tár. I'm co-host Alice King, and with me as always is the Chucky to my M3GAN, the Sharon to my Tár. It's Lee Hutchison. How are you?
Good. I'm just adjusting my little Tory-style necktie right now and getting good to go.
Did you have any M3GANs at your screenings?
No, we didn't, unfortunately. I was a bit gutted looking on at the London screenings.
Yes, Aberdeen Union Square had a M3GAN. I was sat right next to M3GAN. She was standing right at the back of the screen, perfectly still, while everyone was filtering in.
Really?
But didn't do they did. But didn't do the dance before the screening. Sadly not. But no, freaked me right out as I walked in and had to do a double take.
That's insane.
Well, I'm pretty sure it was a member. They found the long, blonde-haired member of staff and made her dress up. But she was committed to the act. I have to give her that. So, yeah. So, of course, yes, this is the film which shows that the horror genre continues to be bulletproof, nothing to lose, fire away, fire away. It is M3GAN, which stands for Model 3 Generative Android. Directed by Gerald Johnson and written by Akela Cooper from a story by her and James Wan, the co-writers of 2021's *Malignant*. It sees a robotics engineer build a lifelike doll to help her niece through the loss of her parents. However, the doll begins to take her responsibilities a little too far. So, Lee, were you looking forward to this one? I'm imagining that you were well aware of M3GAN ahead of the screening. You might not have watched the trailer, but I'm pretty sure you would have seen the memes, the GIFs, and the viral marketing that was surrounding the film.
A little bit, yeah. I was my partner is more likely to use things like TikTok than I am, and I knew about like the dance, for example, and I'd sort of been seeing some of the publicity surrounding the film, for example, in terms of I think classic baseball games as well, like M3GANs are standing in the backgrounds, for example.
It's apparently the new guerrilla marketing tactic. If you want, $100 million horror film, you've got to get to the baseball games. That seems to be the audience. Yeah,
and I just found it things like that I was aware of, and like the concept of it's this killer robot, and yeah, it was one of those things I was kind of looking forward to, because I thought, well, it's going to be kind of maybe so bad it's good, or it's going to be, quite a bit, with Blumhouse it can be a bit hit or miss sometimes, but I thought, well, maybe this one's going to lean into kind of the absurdity of the whole thing, but yeah, I was quite looking forward to it. It was one of those things, like even when I was down in London for a few days with work last week, you couldn't escape M3GAN billboards on the underground. And yeah, it certainly felt like they had a hit on their hand. But as you kind of mentioned, it's a genre that's bulletproof anyway. Like they can put that kind of money behind a bit of a dud potentially and still make the money back. So I was kind of a bit cautious going in, but I was expecting to enjoy myself anyway.
Yeah, I mean, M3GAN has been everywhere over social media over the past month or so, and I mean, like you say, it's not a new idea, is it? A killer robot. I mean, if you took out M3GAN and placed Chucky in there, just did find and replace, I mean, it would be very similar to the, I think it was 2019 reboot of Chucky, which instead of just the classic doll with a bit of a pull string, he does the voice. This one has an AI chip and is, they're connecting to the internet and stuff like that. So, it's not a new idea, but it's about how well you can execute it. And certainly in the lead up to getting awareness about the film, they've certainly done a very good job. I mean, Blumhouse are, the masters of this at the moment. And like you say, I mean, it's very... I'm not going to say it's easy to turn a profit. There are several films out there, which, one we're going to be looking at next week. Babylon, which is going to struggle to turn a profit. But with the horror genre, it's a lot easier because this is a film which had a $12 million budget, very very small. I expect the budget was probably double tripled in terms of once you include marketing costs, but the it made $30 million on its opening weekend, is now up to around about $50 million. This is, it's already in profit, and that's just in the US. Now we're starting to add in the worldwide stuff like this. They're already talking about sequels and stuff like that. Horror is an amazing genre where you can take a very small idea, deliver it very effectively, very cheaply, and people want to be scared, especially in January. It seems when, certainly in the UK, we are looking at awards season, so we're getting that backlog of films which have been out in the US in November, December. We're getting them all in January. We're going to get Empire of Light, Tars, Babylons, Fablemans, The Whale, Women Talking, all coming like 1 week after another. People, lots of people like those films. There are lots of sections on film Twitter that obsess over these films. Some people just want to watch something else, and that's what M3GAN is offering them. So, you get into the cinema. What was the audience experience like for this? I'm intrigued to know because my audience were very vocal at several sections.
No, mine was a pretty quiet one. It was like Saturday, like 1 o'clock in the afternoon, something like that. And it was.
I went on the traditional Friday night.
See, the problem we had was like we were in like the big screen 7, so it's one of those ones you had everyone spread out all over the place. So it wasn't the busiest screening for what I went to see, but it certainly probably at most got some chuckles from the audience. And when I say the audience, I probably mean me and my partner.
Yeah, no, for me, there was, I'd worked in a toy store for about 6 years during university and just afterwards. So there were several moments, particularly the beginning sort of toy commercials about these sort of Furby style pets that talk to their owner and stuff like that. That got a huge reaction. And then several of the things that M3GAN does and her sort of almost matter of fact delivery of them as well. Certainly her musical stylings promoted a lot of laughter and stuff like that. But I think there was like that sort of laughter of it's funny, but also should we be laughing at this? Because there was also laughing at the moments when M3GAN, takes her protection of the niece a little bit too far, and it's like, should we be laughing at M3GAN ripping off a boy's ear and then basically essentially pushing him in front of a car? Well, within the context of the film and the way the film is delivered, yes, apparently we should, I think.
Yeah, it's all kind of, it's not to be taken seriously, and it's not an endorsement of the character whatsoever to find something like that amusing, is it?
I do not endorse M3GAN's actions, but I will laugh at them. Yeah, so, what did you make of the filmmaking overall? And, we have the lead character, well, the lead character essentially is well, for all intents and purposes of marketing, it seems to be M3GAN. But we do have Alison Williams, who, is a Blumhouse regular now. She was, of course, in the fantastic Get Out, and although not a Blumhouse, she's becoming a bit of a scream queen as well. I'm not sure if you've ever seen the film The Perfection on Netflix, but that is just another sort of completely out there horror thriller, which she is excellent in as well. And of course, who can forget the horrific music video which featured in Girls around about 10 years ago as well. What did you make of her in this one?
It's one of those things I found the film, in terms of filmmaking, really kind of missed the mark, truth be told. I think the film is at its funniest when it's kind of skewing that sort of like girl boss, white feminism, that kind of that sort of online white feminism that kind of gets sort of skewed for sort of forgetting that feminism should involve all different types of races and women as well. And that sort of like peak white girl where it's like girl bosses, sort of like, hate to see people kind of winning, that they sort of felt like the way people were talking about M3GAN online as that type of character didn't translate well into the screen. And I think for like quote unquote horror is at its best when it's doing something like that. It maybe has something to say. And I think Tár does that better perhaps than M3GAN, and I felt like that was something that could have really set M3GAN apart and given it something to say, perhaps, like, because it's become such a meme in itself, that girl boss thing, became something that was quite serious, then became quite humorous, then became a meme, then became something to skewer a specific brand of feminism with. And I thought that could have really separated the film, and if it had committed to that bit.
Yeah, because I mean, what's interesting is like you say, when it sort of leans into some things. I mean, there's obviously it's got something to say about over reliance of technology and how that can be taken too far, and also almost the lengths that we are willing to go to avoid talking about things. We just had, say, like the Banshees of Inisherin, where men would rather cut off their own fingers with shears than go to therapy. Here, Alison Williams' character is so focused on her career, and so essentially was shut off from her sister and that side of the family. She has no, even though she creates toys, she has no idea how to actually relate to a child who plays with toys. So therefore, she basically builds something to fill that void. And of course, that's where everything goes wrong. We basically, the over reliance of technology. So, this is something which would, plot wise, it almost feels like it fits in quite well with sort of like films from 20 years ago that were being made in the sort of J horror, the Asian horror market, with like your Rings, which was about the fear of videos, Pulse was about the fear of the internet and stuff like that over reliance of technology. So that's where I thought it worked quite well and had something to say. I think the biggest issue with the film is, and I'm keen to get your thoughts on this, is the decision to skew towards a PG-13 in the States. And it was rated a 15 here. I think that is a questionable decision. I mean, there was nothing really in this film which I thought merited a 15. I thought it was going to be, it looked, if I didn't know the rating beforehand, I would have said it was a 12A. But then I think we would have been into the situation where it could have become the next Gentle Minions, with girls maybe coming dressed up as M3GAN to watch the film and stuff like that. I mean, what did you make of the decision to? It was a conscious decision by the production company in the ratings, but to pull back on the horror, on the more extreme gore, to secure this rating. And I'm wondering, I think this feels like it was a decision clearly made when they saw what audience was picking up on M3GAN in terms of the social media reaction, in terms of the younger audience on TikTok and stuff like that. It was like, clearly we want to get their money, so we're going to do a PG-13 cut, get into cinemas, get them watching it. I fully believe that we are going to get an R-rated version at some point. Do you think we are going to get the unrated, this is the version you did not see in cinemas on Blu-ray and DVD, or do you think Blumhouse are going to try and double dip at the cinema and release like an R-rated cut in cinemas to get, what do you think their plan will be?
I think it'll be one of those things. You'll get it as like a digital extra. It's become the trend recently where you can get the real extended cut, and when you think of like the violence in the film, there wasn't that much that stood out. For example, the as you mentioned, the boy getting his ear pulled off. You got a little bit of that where you're like, okay, they're certainly showing that. They're showing more of it. Oh, it looks like the ear is going to come off, which I thought was quite interesting. But
I didn't know an ear was that flexible.
Yeah, nor did I. And you got that, but none of the other ones, like even the kind of stabbings sort of scenes, kind of took place. It was one of those ones. It was more kind of
it was clearly sort of cut to be sort of almost off camera. And I mean, spoilers here. Someone kind of gets basically drowned, poisoned in sort of weed killer and stuff like that. I was hoping for like a melting face or something like that. I can imagine that was all filmed and will be reinstated. It's just whether they go for, do we try and get everyone to secure a digital purchase or buy the Blu-ray or DVD, or we have had situations in the past with the likes of sort of like Logan and Mad Max where they, or even Parasite, did like the black and white cut or something like that. I'm just wondering if Blumhouse is seeing that, if it's doing this well in cinemas, do they go for a cinematic re-release, or do they try to ensure that longevity in the home market?
I think we'll probably see. It'll probably be more at the home market, won't it? To be honest, I mean, but cinemas,
they'll lead with the version you did not see in cinemas, the version too extreme for cinemas.
Maybe you'll see it maybe in America, because as you mentioned, we're about to get all the kind of the prestige films and so on. They're about to drop in, whereas it's quiet season perhaps in America, where people tend to dump things more then. So there might be that opportunity to kind of get that extra re-release in maybe a few weeks' time. But, I'd been seeing things where people were talking about, really young audiences at these films in America in particular. So kind of the social media kind of marketing and word of mouth has clearly worked there.
Yeah, I think also now where films are released digitally, as opposed to you don't have to go to the expense of striking a new 35mm print, essentially it feels like, well, we just upload, the new digital file, send it out to cinemas, Bob's your uncle, yep, they can play. Of course, you then get in a situation where they play the wrong version to the wrong audience, and then you get people complaining, because people always like to complain. The film, I mean, even if the film had not set up something at the very end, clearly the box office was enough to, guarantee that we are going to proceed and see more M3GANs, whether it's M3GANs or M3GAN 2, even though M3GAN has a 3 in it. Someone sort of said they've kind of screwed themselves over when they get to the third M3GAN. What do they do in terms of a title? I mean, it's an inevitability at this point, isn't it? That we will see M3GAN resurrected in some form.
Yeah, it won't take too long to come out, will it?
No, I think Blumhouse should move very, very quickly, get it in cinemas next January, and then using the Veganuary model, make Veganuary M3GANuary. The marketing just writes itself, doesn't it?
You've done well there.
I think so. Blumhouse, if you're listening, I'll take a percentage on that, or a lifelike M3GAN doll. For purposes,
of course, yes, for getting all of your enemies.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, absolutely. Yeah. No. And just as long as I'm paired with it, she'll protect me at home. Wonder how she is with cats. She didn't like dogs. But I find it interesting that death was not shown on screen, because they still wanted to make M3GAN slightly likable. I think if they'd shown M3GAN if you kill a dog, that is an instant, you're struck off. So it was wise for them to keep that off screen. And apologies for the spoilers if you haven't seen it. We're kind of giving away all the kills.
There is a website that dedicates themselves to telling you if a dog dies in a movie.
Of course, yes. You can search to find out if any sort of pet is injured or killed. So therefore, because it is quite. I know I find myself, now that I have 2 cats, it's like if anyone is violent towards an animal, I do find myself a bit more like towards them. Whereas before, I probably wouldn't have cared so much. So yeah. DoesTheDogDie.com or something like that, I think it is. So yeah. We are bound to see the return of M3GAN probably in about a year's time, so we'll have another podcast on that. But our second film for today is Tár, written and directed by Todd Field, who last directed a film 16 years ago with little children, and he did In the Bedroom. Before that, he himself has been nominated for 3 Oscars and is likely to get more for this film about Lydia Tár, a conductor in charge of the Bill Infernal Monarch, who is in preparations for a performance when her world seemingly comes crashing down when allegations emerge about her conduct with previous students. So, Lee, I think it was mentioned at the end of the 2022 review podcast, this was one of your most anticipated films of the year. It's been getting rave reviews ever since it debuted at Venice. Did it manage to live up to the hype?
Yeah, it's the first time I've given 5 stars to a film since Licorice Pizza back in 2021.
Really?
Yeah.
January is good to you, isn't it?
It's one of those ones I absolutely loved it. I mean, the description you gave there was more than I knew about the entire film. I think I knew it was a type of film that would be very suited to my taste kind of going in, because I look back at the films I've really loved over the past few years, and I have a thing about films about sort of the tortured artist, and I thought, okay, this is going to be for me. I like little children, and I thought, you know what, I want to go into this as blind as possible. I've managed to avoid all the trailers. Having now retroactively gone and watched one of the trailers, I was very stunned at the type of film that they were marketing. I didn't know about sort of the allegations or where it was going to go. I just knew I was in for a treat, and I just loved the journey I went on over that 2.5 hours. I just think that's the type of film that I love, where it's a certain film for about 2.5 hours where it's just that slow build, the tension, the uncomfortableness, and it's just building and building, and you feel it starting to suffocate the character. But as an audience member, you're squirming in your seat, you're feeling uncomfortable, and then you just have almost like 45 minutes of everything you thought could go wrong does go wrong, and how do you sit with that as an audience member? It was a very difficult watch, but incredibly powerful, and leaned into some really interesting themes as well. That kind of, having looked at some of the discourse online, it's been a great film for many things to read, but there's also been, dare I say, some wrong interpretations of the film, or saying that the film shouldn't be about a specific gender in this case, which is a female conductor. And some of it I can understand, but equally some of it I think is very, very wrong in terms of what writing and filmmaking should be.
Yeah, because I mean, Kate Blanchett, who plays Lydia Tarr, the film opens with this sort of New Yorker in conversation, and she is sort of very clear that she has got to her position and she's wanted to be recognized as a conductor, not as a female conductor. She doesn't want to have the term maestro and maestra. She just wants to be known as a conductor, and she believes she's gotten to that point. So yeah, she's tried to take gender out of it, and then the sort of film is slowly building to exploring, well, can a woman be, should a woman be held to the same standards as a man when it comes to allegations of abuse and sexual impropriety towards students and colleagues and stuff like that? And yeah, like you say, for the longest time, it's almost holding off on, you're wondering when is this house of cards that she has very carefully built up going to start come crashing down. And because you were with Lydia Tarr the entire time, for the whole film, but certainly for the entire time up to that point, I'm keen to know where your allegiances lie. Were you sympathetic to her, or did you manage to keep yourself at a distance, or I mean, did you feel?
I think the film keeps you at a distance, doesn't it? It's a very cold and sterile film. I mean, we see some of these other kind of characters kind of drop in, and anytime we do see them, whether it's a wife, an assistant, a colleague, they're being treated very poorly, to be generous. They are people where you're watching their behavior going, oh, this doesn't fit right. But it's kind of normalized to an extent where you go, of course, someone in a position of power within an entertainment industry, whether that's film, classical music, behaves that way. We've seen that all too often recently. So it wasn't one of those ones where I'm watching her and judging her. It's one of these ones you're almost acting sort of trying to be the best member of the jury, where you're trying to just sit back, you're listening to all the facts, everything unfold in front of you. I mean, as far as I'm aware, there's no ambiguity about what she did in the film. She did everything she was accused of, in terms of, there's a bit where you see the sort of video edit, and it's all kind of filmed from different sides and put together, but she didn't particularly behave well in that sort of setting. That's the most generous thing that you can let her off with, but what she did, and how you respond to that as an audience member maybe tells you something about yourself. But it was hard not to watch that and think that she's someone that I hope she gets her just desserts. There's films sometimes where you're maybe rooting for someone to get away with it, or you're so uncomfortable, how are they going to get away with it? I hope they get away with it. With this, you're like, how is this going to come down for her? And you get this steady drop of, there's emails going on, okay, there's people investigating it, all these things were building up where you're like, it's bound to fall apart. She isn't brazen. Everyone knows what she's like, but has been very accepting of that, whether that's her co-workers or her wife, and that's they've all enabled that behavior until, I guess, it becomes a threat to them.
Yeah, I mean, I have a slightly different interpretation of some of the events. So, on the first viewing, I wasn't completely sold on it. I think it had like a lot of hype up to that point, and there was just something that didn't quite click for me. But then it was a film which I couldn't really stop thinking about after I'd seen it. I said, I need to see this again. And there's an element of the film which I found really interesting. And there was a moment where I saw something and I was like, whoa, okay, right. And then I started to sort of revisit certain scenes and see, well, what am I? I'm now looking for something else and stuff like that. Now, while it's clear that, she did certain things, it was interesting to view it from the perspective of another character who seems to be very instrumental in the orchestration of her downfall, pun intended. And that is, I'm going to go into slight, tiny spoiler section for Tar here, because I would like to get your opinion on this one. And that is the character of her assistant, Francesca, played by Nomi Marlon from the wonderful Portrait of a Lady on Fire. Now, she is her assistant. It's hinted at that maybe she might have got that position through a potential relationship with Lydia, and she is at one point in line to take over as essentially sort of second chair of the orchestra. And it's basically seen as a reward for all her hard work as being an assistant. And then she is passed over because the walls are closing in on Lydia, and she realizes that if she promotes her, it might give credence to all these sort of things. But then her assistant goes missing, and seemingly forwards emails that had been sent from a former student who Lydia had blacklisted, potentially after a similar relationship. But then there is the video that goes online, which kind of sparks all this stuff. Now, Lydia mentions at one point that this was meant to be a camera-free, device-free lecture. No one should have been filming. Now, I watched that scene again from that perspective, second time round, and none of the students are filming.
No, and it all comes from different angles as well, doesn't it?
I believe it comes from there is one person filming, and they are stood right at the very back, and it is Nomi Marlon. She is the one filming it. Now, she's filmed it and then seemingly edited it, and she's the one that has released this video. Clearly in some sort of, punishment for what she's done. She's been screwed over, she's been passed over for this. So she is instrumental in this. And, she is... But who, I want to get your opinion, who do you believe is behind these sort of symbols which we see scrawled on things like the metronome, the missing scorebook at one point, the proofed copy that was in Francesca's house, it seems to have this little symbol on it as well. Who's behind that? And who is behind the live Instagram video at the beginning and then at the book talk? Because I'm trying to piece together when, we get this before the reverse end credits, which come at the beginning of the film. There's a very brief thing where Lydia Tár is sleeping on a private plane. Now, if this is done in sequential order, that's, on our way to the New Yorker thing, so it would be Nomi Marlon's Francesca. Or is this from the point of view of the new character of Olga, the Russian cellist who, a similar relationship?
I think it is, yeah. Because
you think it's Olga in that one? And do you think she's talking to Francesca?
I think so, and you sort of see it at the beginning of the film where you sort of see this red-headed girl, which could be the Krista Taylor.
Yeah, I noticed that second time around, that Krista seems to have been at the New Yorker talk. And then, I was wondering, are her and Francesca in it together? It reminded me a lot of Michael Haneke's Hidden, where, you're watching this film and you're like, you think you've seen one film and then it's just this video at the end, and then you see two certain characters interact very, very briefly, which then throws you into, well, I need to watch this film again from another point of view. And that's what I loved about Tár, is I'm now watching it from a different point of view, and to see, Lydia, yes, she did some bad things, but, clearly this is something which has been orchestrated. But who all is in on it? How many people are involved in the taking it down? I don't believe the wife is, but are Olga and Francesca in on it together, and at what point did they come together to do this and stuff like that? It's a really fascinating film to rewatch and start to try and dig into and see.
There's a
How it's all
great
coming together.
article I'd recommend reading on the Slate that kind of dives into the film of like, I think it kind of came out sort of early December, so when it was still making its way into the world, and almost discussing of like, it's another reason I'm quite keen to rewatch the film again, I must admit, where there's
Is this about the entire third act in her head one? Yeah, from the point that she hits her head. And so
yeah.
is it? I guess yeah.
And I think it's quite fascinating to watch because I think the article showed like little screenshots where you sort of see Krista in the background, almost like a ghost-like figure. There's like one where you see her in the apartment, for example, and like it's such a rich film, and it's one of those ones like you watch it and she gets what she deserves, and it's fascinating to him, and she's pissed off so many people on the way, but there's almost an element with that video where like what's quite fascinating is like there's angles that are taken that shouldn't make sense about who's captured what and stuff, which just kind of throws you off what is kind of unfolding with this film. And I think that's what just makes it so rich to watch. Like there's this nest of vipers, but who could it be? And all the different phases that it kind of goes through, and it makes it so fascinating to watch unfold. And yeah, just you've got the Olga character, and that's someone where she clearly has this reputation. People have spoken. There's so you can play her.
There's the silent looks between the orchestra, like at each other when she suggests doing open auditions for a certain part, which would have gone to the first cellist, and then it's like, well, okay, right, well, we all see what's going on at this, but she's so important and seemingly, irreplaceable at that point that they all have to go along with it, and it's not basically until this video and the suicide sort of things converge that they realize, oh, actually, well, maybe she's not. And of course, we then get that wonderful sequence at the end where they've been working towards this production of Mahler's Fifth, the last one that she needs to do, and it looks like she's about to take the stage for it, and then she just rushes Mark Strong's character and body slams him out of the way. I mean, that moment came out of left field because it does look like she's preparing to go on, they're preparing to welcome her on stage, and then it just takes this wild turn, which got a huge reaction from my audience. I mean, I don't know about yours, but it was such a wonderful moment. I mean, she is fierce.
It's a hell of a wig Mark Strong is wearing in this film as well. And
yes.
It's that whole last section is just tragic to watch. Like, not tragic over you feel pity, but just how
sort of David Brent cringy.
Yeah, how just it all falls apart for her, sort of like having to return to that family home, Linda Tár, and just sort of where her career ends up, just the indignity, but it just shows the cycles continuing on for a character like that. Obviously there was an element, I wouldn't say it was the most subtle, but she goes for a massage and you can pick out the girl you want, and she picks out the number 5, and just sort of video games. Yeah, just she will continue on in another place, and you think back to other abusers and how many of them have ended out in the Far East in places like this and have continued on in sort of indignity,
or potentially rebuilt their reputation and made a comeback. Later on. It's fascinating too. It's not the end for Lydia. It certainly makes it look like she's going to be okay, but then of course there's then that sort of turn and reveal as to what she's actually conducting. And I'm not going to spoil it in case anyone hasn't seen the film yet, but it did raise some chuckles. But I mean, there's we've talked about Kate Blanchett. It's just, I think she's one of the greatest actresses ever. I think she's magnificent in this. What did you make of her performance?
She was brilliant. I really think she deserves to win the Oscar for that performance. It's such a hard role to kind of take on, and I just thought she was incredible. It was so, I think she's in every single scene and moment of the film, and just her performance just it just was gripping. It's impossible to say that she blew my mind or surprised me with this role, because she continues to always be the best thing in whatever she stars in, whether that's a Thor Ragnarok, a Carol. This was just an incredible performance. She blends powerful, pathetic at the same time, and that's hard to do. As I say, you get that scene where she's trying to manipulate the orchestra into, oh, we should elevate this choice of music, and we should elevate this person, and it's not a subtle thing whatsoever, and it isn't meant to be, but the way she does it, you're just watching it and you're just cringing. There's great actors, and she's taken on this role where she's acting within an actor, but she's not the amazing actress that Cate Blanchett is.
And apparently she's learned a new skill. Apparently, they believe that she had to learn conducting, and apparently she's considered good enough to be able to conduct an orchestra. So it's always nice when you learn a skill on a film. I thought she was sensational, and I know that there's a lot of talk. It's basically seems to be between her and Michelle Yeoh. For Everything Ever All at Once for Best Actress at the Oscars and BAFTAs, etc., and stuff like that. It seems such a shame that it has to be one or the other. I think Michelle Yeoh is brilliant in everything. I mean, it's argued that, it's easy to argue that she does more because she's playing more versions of that character, but I don't think there is a loser if either one of them wins.
And
yes,
genre
I
is
think
always
both,
up against it, isn't it?
Yeah.
With genre cinema, it's always on the losing side.
There will be arguments, that out of the 94 Oscars, 93 the best actress winners have been white, so maybe it's time for a woman of color or Asian descent to win, etc. But if Cate Blanchett wins, I don't think anyone can argue that her performance is not good enough to win Best Actress. It's just one of those ones that, everyone's a winner in that. It's horrible to say, but everyone's a winner. Cate Blanchett, I think, said that at the Critics' Choice Awards on Sunday, that we need to stop, handing out trophies and whatever to, one particular actress out of 5. It's just, let's just celebrate. It's a great year for actors. We celebrate, the medium as opposed to any individual. So yeah, there's that. But one of the controversial, perhaps, wins of Tár at the Critics' Choice Awards was Hildur Gunnarsson's score for Tár. Potentially, given the fact that one would argue that maybe there's not a lot of score in it, and the score that is in it is written by classical composers.
Because that's why so many films get disqualified from the Oscars, yeah. Isn't it? Which
I don't know if it has or not has been. Because the Batman actually is one that potentially was maybe disqualified for use of classical music and stuff like that. I don't know if Tár is in it or not, but part of me does wonder if all those critics who were sent those vinyls of Tár featuring Cate Blanchett on the front cover were potentially swayed by that gift or not. I don't know, but Tár does feature a banger of a song on the end credits, I thought.
It does, and a very unexpected one at that. I think, based on the Oscar credentials, it won't get nominated because we've seen so many great scores over the year, and the names aren't coming to mind, but even things where they just use a small sample. There was a Paul Thomas Anderson one, was it There Will Be Blood did get nominated for an Oscar, I think, because of sort of a use of a small sample or something like that. There's some ridiculous... No, it was The Master. I think it was The Master. I don't think this film, apart from you could maybe go for Best Original Song, that could be an interesting Oscar night.
Well, potentially. Tár versus Taylor Swift versus Rihanna versus Lady Gaga versus Natu Natu from RRR. Where everyone has to do the dance from RRR until we have a last man or woman standing, and that's the person who takes home the Oscar. Cate Blanchett versus... I would watch that. I would pay good money to watch that. But yes, it's sadly probably an unlikely thing to happen on the Oscars because that's too good an idea for the Oscars to go with. So yeah. So at the moment, I'm guessing Tár is your film of the year.
Yeah, it's the film of the year.
It's only been a couple of weeks, but we've got a while to beat. Next week, I guess we're going to have to see if Babylon can muster up that. It's divisive reviews so far. But, if you're a fan of, nearly 3-hour-long films, about old Hollywood featuring Brad Pitt and Margot Robbie, then it's probably right up your street. But it is a new film from Damien Chazelle. The only question I have about the film is, will it end on a silent shot between two people looking at each other? As in First Man, as in La La Land, as in Whiplash. That's my only caveat.
We'll
That's
have
what I want
to
see
wait
from the
3
film.
hours 9 minutes to find out.
Plus ads and trailers.
Yeah, plus ads and trailers.
Indeed. So, yeah, that brings us the end of another episode. If you have some thoughts on Tar and who is behind the mysterious text, Instagram messages, and her downfall, please, hit us up in the chats, or if they want to get you on Twitter, where can they find you, Lee?
Yeah, you can find me on Twitter at @LeeHutchison_.
And I'm at DallasKing1138. And of course, you can also check us out on the A24 project. We had quite a few films to get through up until Christmas, but we're going to be back in a couple of weeks with Sharper, which is dropping on Apple TV as well. So there's lots of content in inverted commas for you to enjoy. But we'll see you soon. Cheers. Bye-bye.
Join the revolution. Join the Nerd Party.